Chapter 24, Big Secrets. Her eyes were no longer glowing, and the only light shining was the moon surrounded by thousands of twinkling stars. Over by the tree line stood Mike, staring at the two of us. His eyes went from a purple hue back to dark brown. Not only had Zeke and I witnessed this intense vision, but so had Mike, as his soul was one with mine. Zeke and I slowly stood up. He heard me call upon a god to awaken his soul. A smile formed on his face, and he wrapped his arms around me tightly as I accepted the warm embrace. He slowly pulled away. "Thanks, Amber. I know who my soul is. I'm Asclepius," he said with confidence. Mike sauntered over. "I know who that is. In the video game War of Gods, Asclepius was the god of medicine and healing, one of many children to Apollo. It would make sense that you gravitate toward the study of natural and synthetic medicine, always wanting to help heal others." I reached up to touch my face. "That is why you could heal me." My right hand rubbed my dove necklace while my thoughts raced. "If your soul is the son of Apollo and my soul is the daughter of Apollo, that would make our souls brother and sister," I said. "Well, half-siblings. My soul's mother is Cornus, the Thessalian princess. She was murdered at his birth, not sure by who, though. Another secret they carry," Zeke replied with contemplating something. "But the news of the sibling relations with him and Electra is bothersome. He's not taking it well. I could feel it." Electra did not know as well. The same emotion flowed through me. Zeke continued explaining his visions. "Artemis persuaded my soul to come down to Earth to protect Electra." He shook his head. "Electra was unaware." Zeke took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. "Asclepius had his own secret," Zeke mentioned. "What's that?" I asked. "He had an attraction towards Electra, as many did because of her beauty. He wanted to make her his wife. That was the only reason he accepted the duty to be her silent protector," Zeke explained. Electra fumed inside. She didn't need a protector. Zeke continued his thoughts. "But what is crazy about all this, Artemis knew they were half-siblings, but told no one. It was in my book, I recalled, The Secret Affair Between Apollo and Her Mother Pleione." Zeke and I shared the same hurtful feelings. The betrayal by Artemis was beyond appalling. Between her knowing about my true father and her thinking I needed a protector was exasperating. Why the secrets? "Artemis has fooled both of us, both of our souls," I protested. "If only I could tell her how upset I am right now." Pregnancy hormones and Electra's ambivalent emotions were making it hard for me to keep it together. Zeke reflected on his thoughts. "Yes, but with the new information, I can make some sense of this. In Greek mythology, it was common for gods to marry siblings. A god was always to marry a goddess, and their choices were limited. But the gods naturally draw toward the one they feel is who they are destined to be with. In this case, Asclepius was unaware of the sibling relation, but instinctively felt attracted to Electra." "How do you know all this?" I asked. "I like to read in my spare time," Zeke replied. Suddenly, Mike's thoughts turned angry. He stepped toward Zeke with his head high and chest out. "I'm not so sure I like that you're drawn to my wife." I stepped between them. "Mike, you can't blame Zeke for his feelings. He just said they aren't even his." Mike took a deep breath. "I know. I just don't like it." I turned to Zeke. "Guys, listen. At least this explains why you are always trying to protect me. Asclepius has a thing for Electra, not Zeke having a thing for Amber." I faced Mike. "Logically, just because our souls have an interesting and intriguing history doesn't mean it defines who we are as humans. They may be a part of us during our lifetime, but I'm still Amber, you're still Mike, and you are still Zeke, all the way to our last breath." I paused for a second. "Just think of it as our souls hitching a ride and joining us on our journey. If anything, they seem to be excellent teachers and protectors. Electra has helped me in more ways than I can thank her for." Both of them seemed to absorb my reasonings, although I was struggling to convince myself. The more memories that were shown to me, the more I felt I was one with Electra. But Amber was who I was, and it was important to keep true to myself. I grabbed Mike's hand. "As long as we keep their emotions repressed, we still have control of our own. Let the gods' past be their past as we create an alternative history for us. I love you, Mike, always." Forever love? A smile perked from his lips, and he nodded. Forever love. He leaned down to hug me. Then Mike picked up a shovel and handed it to Zeke. Let Asclepius know that he is to keep his emotions in check. Zeke took the shovel. Message received. Danny walked over to see what was taking us so long. Everything good? Zeke nodded, grabbed the other shovel from the trunk, and handed it to me. He pulled out a flashlight and shut the trunk. No one wanted to share with her what had happened, and it was probably best she didn't know. Danny glared at me uncomfortably while we lifted 2 shovels from the trunk, and Danny glared at me uncomfortably while she lifted 2 shovels from the trunk, handed one to Mike. I was sure she thought this was all my fault, but I didn't blame her. I didn't know how to think otherwise. We slipped through the dark woods back to Zoe's deceased body, where Evan and Max were patiently waiting. Once we got her into the ground, Evan made a cross out of branches, and Zeke placed it on top of the grave. He took off his necklace that had the dolphin ring attached and placed it on the cross. I knew that wasn't easy for him to let go. Zeke joined us in a half circle while we stared at the loose dirt with no words. He then reached down with his left hand for Danny's as he smiled and accepted his tight grip. As she smiled and accepted his tight grip for consolation. I reached down for Mike's hand with my right as he squeezed it tight, looking deep in his brown eyes, thinking, I don't know what I would have done if something had happened to him. Mike had been my rock and tremendous supporter through all my crazy changes. Zeke was still unsure what to say. I took my left hand and placed it into Zeke's for comfort. Then Danny took Evan's hand, Evan took Max's hand, all 6 now connected, star children, star seeds, linked hand in hand, eyes glowing brightly. We shared energy to give each other strength through this arduous journey. 5 minutes of silence went by. Our eyes returned to normal. We had to keep moving before the next group of trackers find us. Zeke grabbed the shovel and headed back to the vehicles, and everyone followed. Mike stopped me while everyone else continued toward the vehicles. Maybe we should consider heading home after we get to the tree, Mike advised. What? I questioned. I thought you wanted to raise this baby with other star children. I do, but... He hesitated while looking at the ground. I seem to fail at keeping you and the baby safe. Once again, if it wasn't for Zeke... Mike, no, don't put yourself down. I get that you and Zeke want to protect me, but I don't always need protection. What I need is your unconditional love. That keeps me strong. Mike reached for my dove necklace and adjusted the chain. He took a deep breath and sighed, smiled, and pressed his cold lips onto mine. You guys coming? Evan asked from up ahead. Yeah, we're coming, I shouted. Once we reached the Camaro, I walked over to where the book should have been laying, but it was missing. Odd. Where could it have gone? I headed back toward the Camaro where I saw Zeke on the driver's side. Are you sure you want to drive? Mike asked while leaning in the passenger side window. Yeah, I will not be sleeping anytime soon, he assured him. You guys try to get some rest. Mike handed him the keys. I crawled to the back and Mike sat on the passenger side. Since my reading material was no more, I might as well sleep. Mike's jacket was laying in the back. I bolted up to make a pillow out of it. My eyes closed, and within minutes after driving away, I was sound asleep. Suddenly, I was no longer in the back seat. To my right was Mike, and behind us were trackers. Not again. These dreams were exhausting. We were racing through the woods as fast as we could, and my powers were useless. Dark clouds hid the sun, and rain was pouring down hard. Both of us were soaked from head to toe. We continued to run down the side of the river until we came to the end. Below us was a waterfall with at least a 40-foot drop, but they approached us fast. The decision had to be made. We looked at each other, nodded, held hands, and jumped. Slamming into the water was like a bus hitting us at 50 miles per hour. Bam. I took a deep breath of air as I woke myself up from this nightmare. The bright sun was shining on my face. I was back in the Camaro. Outside the rolled-down window was the Jeep. It appeared they parked outside a small convenience store. Danny and Zeke stood outside talking. The rest must have been inside. My heart was pounding and sweat slid down my face. I reached up to open the door and climbed out. Zeke walked over to me. Are you okay? He asked. Yeah, just a bad dream. Where are we? Waystown, Texas, Zeke replied. Are we close to Camp Texas? He shook his head. We're roughly 4 hours south from them. Unfortunately, they are out of the way. Boss wants us to keep moving west. My watch said 9:14 a.m. I'd slept for a long time. The guys came out of the store. Sorry, we didn't want to wake you, Mike said. You seemed peaceful. I rolled my eyes and sighed. Consumed by torture is more like it. Nightmares getting worse? He asked. I nodded. Did you see a restroom inside? Yes, back of the store to the left, Mike said. You want me to show you? No, it's all right. I'll find it. I walked to the back of the store and pushed through the bathroom door. The smell was rough. Not a welcoming odor, but what do you expect in a small town in the middle of nowhere? After I used the bathroom, I washed my hands and then cupped the cool water, splashing it all over my face. But then I heard a commotion coming from outside. The window above the mirror was cracked. It sounded like my team. See, I had to climb on top of the sink. Damn it. 4 trackers with guns pointing at all 5 of my people. These men wouldn't give up. Rubbing my eyes to make sure this wasn't another dream, I blinked a few times. Nope, it was real. I examined the trackers and noticed how young they were. They couldn't be older than 16. They were just kids, like most of our star children. Where's Amber? One young soldier demanded. No one answered the boy, not even Danny, who I was sure was itching to tell them. I quickly jumped down and darted through the store. The clerk seemed to not have a clue what commotion was going on outside the store. He was too busy playing games on his phone. I advanced toward the end of the black car, keeping low, peeking around to see trackers with their backs to me and holding them at gunpoint. My crew still had their hands in the air, refusing to answer. I stepped out in the open. Looking for me? I shouted. Before they could make any decision, I brought both of my hands in the air, not even thinking about the consequences of being seen by others. My eyes shone with sparks of flames, and I manifested all of my energy to lift the guns out of their grips. The young soldiers reached for the weapons as they floated high above their heads. My crew was laughing while watching the rifles float away from the confused trackers and into their crew's hands. With the guns now in our possession, they aimed at the trackers. One major problem. Danny was staring down the barrel, and her finger was ready to pull the trigger. No, I shouted. Using my energy, I knocked the gun out of her hand, and Mike picked it up. The 4 trackers were terrified. They panicked and darted away as fast as they could without looking back. Why did you do that? She barked while stepping in the direction. I expected Evan to be mad at me for breaking his rule for kill on sight, but I didn't have it in me to kill innocent children. I stood waiting for him to reprimand me on my decision, but instead he backed me up. Danny, they're kids, he said. But we can't let them go. Those kids will be back to kill us. And when they do, we won't be here. Plus, we have their guns, Evan assured her. This is why we need to get to this tree of knowing. But you said kill, Evan cut her off. I know what I said. I'm making this call. I could tell Danny wanted to say more, but she bit her tongue. She respected his leadership even when she didn't agree. Mike walked over and hugged me tight, and I squeezed him back. We need to go before someone notices what just happened and calls the police, I said. Agreed, Evan said. It was only a matter of time until the next trackers attack us. We hustled to the cars, and our adventure continued to find this tree of knowing, one step closer to ending this war.